Hi, everyone. This is JT O'Brien. Just letting you know that the Commission became part of the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security after recording this podcast. You can check them out at www.atlanticcouncil.org. In the meantime, please enjoy this episode of Biollywood. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Biollywood podcast, where we explore biological threats in pop culture and what they teach us about real-world biodefense. I'm JT O'Brien, Research Principal at the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense, joined by our Executive Director, Dr. Asha M. George.
Hello.
And our Policy Principal, Rob Bradley.
Howdy.
Today we're diving into Doctor Who, the 2009 special, The Waters of Mars, which is a claustrophobic off-world outbreak thriller where a water-borne alien pathogen meets planetary protection ethics and a doctor on the edge. The premise of this is on the planet of Mars in the year 2059 at Bowie Base One, an international crew begins succumbing to the flood, which is a sentient waterborne infection released from a subsurface glacier. As the base falls, the 10th Doctor confronts a fixed point in time and history and his own hubris as the Time Lord victorious. Spoiler alert, this podcast will contain full spoilers for The Water of Mars, so if you have not seen it yet, we highly recommend you do so. And let's get started. I think, based on, compared to the Praxeus episode that we watched, this was phenomenal. Out of the gate, it was just amazing in terms of the pacing, the acting, the storyline. There were things that I just wasn't expecting. It was pretty unpredictable. I felt like what was going to happen throughout the entire thing. But I also really appreciated the attention to, the science and the fact that, we know there's water on Mars, and they use this real, possibility to kind of describe something out there. But also that the scientists were not negligent or dumb in their containment, capabilities. It was a filter failed.
A filter failed.
And
yeah,
that was the main breach, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it was a filter failed. I think 24 hours before the story kind of picks up. It's a little. I was a little puzzled why the member of the mission who noticed that the filter had failed and that there wasn't a replacement didn't bother to mention it to anybody.
Yeah, that
was a little surprising.
Yeah,
you would think that that'd be the first thing you'd mention, and then ideally you'd have some sort of redundant system for filtering or otherwise ensuring that you had safe water to drink if the primary system was non-functional because of a lack of additional filters. You'd also think that that'd be one of those things you'd bring a lot of with you if you were going on a mission to Mars.
Filters.
Or have the means to fabricate additional filters if you needed them to. So that was a little perplexing. But to your point, the containment strategies that they employ throughout the episode are correct. It's just, I guess you could call it a failure of the imagination. But I think it was us not anticipating that the threat would be able to overcome those measures.
Right.
The way that ultimately it did in this episode.
But did you think that they should have that it was realistic that they should have been so sure that the filters and whatever other protective mechanisms they were putting in place would, even without the failure of something like that they should have been just so sure that everything would have been okay? They're the first people going out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been. I know we have to take risks and we have to go and we have to just do the best we can with what we have. But I just thought was unrealistic. I don't think a scientist would go out and be like, What happened? What we have is 100% going to be okay. Now,
Yeah.
that said, they didn't know about this organism or whatever.
But to your point, why didn't they not test the water in the first place before they started drinking it?
Well, we don't know for a fact that they didn't test the water after it was filtered when they first
Oh,
arrived, right?
right.
It's the near future. Maybe they have some sort of diagnostic or some sort of testing equipment that can test water for and sequence anything
Yeah.
that's in the water, and they tested it after it was filtered, because why bother testing it before you filter it?
There's life, but
Well, I
for the
mean,
sake of science.
but for the sake of
yeah,
science,
yeah.
I suppose. But theoretically, they could have been testing the water after it was filtered and determined it
Correct.
was safe to drink, and just never realized. To your point, maybe they should have tested without the filter as well, but never realized that it was as dangerous as it ultimately proved to be
Right.
before filtering. That's one possibility. But I agree with you, Asha. It would have been nice if they had established that they had done something like that to confirm that the water was safe to drink. Frankly, if I'm on a mission like this and I have a stove or some other means of heat
Yeah, I'm
available to me,
boiling
I'm
it.
boiling the water
Boiling it.
regardless of what the testing is telling me.
And even
Even on Earth,
Yeah,
But
if I'm drinking water from a random source, I don't care.
yeah,
I'm gonna boil it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna boil it.
But even then, I would say somebody on a mission like this, there should at least be one person who's saying, This may not work. Maybe heat makes things worse, Rob. We don't know. Maybe iodine isn't sufficient to kill whatever this organism was. We just don't know 100%. So
Or it could
that
be like the
one
thing where
piece
the
of
nuke will make it
this
worse.
was a little bit, it was unrealistic to me that they were so shocked that this could have happened.
yeah.
Especially as the first people to live there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
they were not that they didn't think that this was a possibility. And it was an international crew as well, which I thought was really interesting.
I think that this
Um,
this advocates for the need to employ the 12th man. Do you remember from World War Z? And actually, it's an Israeli thing. They always have when it comes to evaluating the threat, they force onto a team. Usually, it's 12 people. Um, the 12th man is the person who has to argue for the counter argument.
Mhm.
So in that case,
they're always devil's advocate, essentially.
well, something else is advocate.
something.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I mean, in World War Z, not that we're going to save that
We're
for a
gonna get
different podcast, but 11 people in Israel evaluating some raw communications that they got about what seemed to be a zombie or whatever. Said no, it couldn't possibly be that, and they forced somebody, the 12th man, to examine it and see. And that is how these Israelis in the movie get so far ahead of everybody else, because they realize that there actually is something going on. The guy was able to prove something, at least enough to say we're not sure that it's not
Yeah.
Right.
a zombie thing. So similarly, I think if and we are if we go to these other places, somebody, if nothing else, we need a 12th man who or woman who's going to say, hey, maybe these filters aren't going to work. Maybe all of our backup systems and all of our plan B's and C's are not going to work. Iodine is not going to work. What else can we put in place? How would we
Yeah.
find out?
And I feel like you need somebody who would understand how to adapt the protocol, because I think that was Adelaide's main failure throughout. And it's not even really a failure, because she followed protocol the whole way through, and the protocol was good. It made sense.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't survive first contact.
Correct. Yeah, he just didn't survive first contact.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's
I don't know what they could have done.
Well, but
Yeah,
that's that's the question I had as I was watching this. How can we ensure that we can protect water and other vital supplies that presumably astronauts are going to require, or anyone who's settling on another planet are going to require, from contamination? It's not just a question of survival for those, for the people involved, but it's making sure that that we can be reasonably certain that people that we send out will be able to survive. From
Yeah.
a policy perspective, from a science perspective, is it filtering? if we decide to use the water on Mars, is it filtering the water through something as, like a terrestrial filter, or is it a different
Right.
means? Are we going to be telling these people you're boiling water every day of your life for the rest of your lives? What is the protocol? And then how do we make sure that people are trained in it and can adapt, to your point? And I just don't know if I have a good answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is a good one, because like with this kind of a threat, it is so unprecedented. I mean, yes, there could have been things that they did, like test the water, beforehand. Um, but assuming that they did all of that and it wasn't showing up, because that's a possibility as well, that it just wouldn't have shown up in their tests, because it's
Yeah.
we're
It's
talking about a
novel.
life form on a different planet.
Yeah.
It might not even be DNA based, so a sequencer wouldn't work on it. So
It could be mirror
it
biology.
could be mirror biology. I doubt being that close to Earth that it
But
would be,
That's
but
one thing I do want to say is when Doctor Who shows up, he knows who they are, right? Because he's coming from the future. He knows exactly who they are, right? He knows that they all died. But apparently he didn't know about this water threat, right? He
Yeah,
just
correct, because his knowledge of them extends to news reporting from the period of time after their death.
yeah,
right.
and those
And
were only
nobody
mentioned.
ever, and those only mentioned the explosion that occurred on the
Correct.
surface.
So I think there's an implication here for perhaps recording what's going on in a place like this and sending packets of information back to Earth, no matter what, even if it's super boring stuff and everybody's just walking around in a little habitat and nothing is happening. Okay, but there might be some times when something is happening, and at least let there be some video or audio or whatever to go back, so that just in case someone knows something more than, oh gee, there was a big explosion. Number one, I want to say that. The other is, if there was a big explosion and Doctor Who knows about it,
And they knew the protocol.
I'm assuming that we went back to Mars anyway.
We had to have gone back.
So what happened to the water creature?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
that-
wouldn't it have kept happening over and over
Doesn't
again?
he mention something about ice warriors?
That's
There's
about the past.
he
Oh,
was
that's what-
well, so
That's what happened.
there's another race of things on Mars, creatures on Mars called ice warriors. I don't recall if they were on that part of Mars or elsewhere. I'm not overly familiar with that episode. I don't think I've actually seen the episode, but I'm aware of it. It's a good question. My assumption was that the nuke must have taken out the entire ice field that these creatures lived in.
Oh,
Since the ice field that they were mining from was within the dome, or kind of part of their station.
so they
So
destroyed with it.
yeah, so you would have to assume
Uh-huh.
that they only existed in that one ice field,
Yeah.
and that it was completely wiped out by the nuke, and that that a nuke could actually eliminate them, which is not necessarily a guarantee depending on the life form.
Well, we watched, what was it we watched recently? Where the nuke didn't work, and it would have made it worse.
It was
The
Andromeda
Andromeda strain, yeah.
Andromeda strain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which it was such a cool idea,
yeah,
because like that's the thing, like I think you would always think, just nuke it.
yeah.
But
But
no,
it
that-
actually feeds on the energy.
right,
Yeah.
and especially when you're talking about space
Yeah.
and the mutations from the
These other
radiation,
organisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so it's not a guarantee that
it's not a guarantee.
But I think we just have to assume that it was successful, because otherwise, you're right. All of humanity would have become, or at least would have been threatened by this, and reporting further into the future would have said something about these
Mhm.
life forms, and they didn't.
Yeah, and I guess there's also an implication here for attribution.
Yeah.
I think if we're doing this and going around, in space, we ought not to be just assuming that, oh, gee, there was an explosion and there must have been an accident that caused the explosion, and that's the end of it. It could maybe, I know this is kind of an extreme scenario, but there was a series of events that led to the
Yeah, there was a
explosion,
protocol.
and that's what you really want to know about. The explosion is like tertiary in terms of importance compared to what this episode was really about, what really happened.
Yeah, and we did get to see kind of like the policy or the public
Mm-hmm.
response to this, or even government response, kind of, to the actual event of the nuclear explosion happening there. But people in the government should have known that was the protocol. Number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I think if any of us heard, oh, the first colony on Mars got nuked, I might think,
No, that there was an explosion.
It was
I
a
think is
nuclear.
what we would hear.
It ended up being a nuclear
It was a
explosion.
nuclear explosion.
But I don't know if it was in the paper. I don't recall if they specifically said
you might be
nuclear
right.
explosion in the
Yeah.
paper.
Um,
And so there's a question, but you're right. There's a question of
yeah.
was it an accident? Was it intentional on the part of the people on the base? Because you're right, the government would have been aware that they had a bomb, but would Joe Q Public have known
Right.
that they equipped themselves or they came with that as part of a protocol?
Yeah.
So when newspapers are reporting on this, is the
Mhm.
public thinking that this was an attack? Or
Right.
some other grave accident that was triggered by some supply or fuel that they
Well,
had.
and how would they have even found out? It's not like, again, it's not like they had communications just sort of blasting out from Mars. So it probably is just one entity here.
The government probably reporting.
Somebody in
Yeah,
the
the government,
government if they got any information,
Yeah.
it would have just gone to one place, and then someone there would have said, okay, we're only going to communicate this piece. We don't know what happened. We don't have enough information. We need to keep up our space program. We don't want to get canceled. We have to
Well,
keep
yeah.
going.
Also, the
I can imagine.
International Space Treaty, or the Outer Space Treaty,
Outer
International
Space
Outer Space Treaty. If it's still in effect in 2059, you're not allowed to put nukes up in space. We've just decided that's not
Well, technically,
not
it's on a planet instead of out in space.
Is
that's like saying you can't put it on the high
is
I'm
that
just saying that is a technicality that a government might.
I mean, I
don't know. We have to read the outer space.
Did the treaty? Oh, we'd have to go back and
No.
read that treaty, but
It might not. Well, because the Russians recently have put, we suspect, a nuke in space just as a test run.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, to your
But,
point
yeah.
though about attribution, Asha, tough to figure out after the fact what happened at this base if you've nuked the entire scene, right? Not much left to analyze if the government even wanted to send a team up there to try to figure out what happened.
Well, I agree with that, but I suppose it's possible. But now this speaks to, like, well, who's going to do that? On our planet right now, the leads in terms of expertise are in the FBI. Our
Send
FBI
FBI,
is
yeah,
going
right.
around all over the place. Now we're
Real
going to
space
send them into
rangers.
space. Is this something that NASA's going to pick up? Are we going to leave it as a law enforcement thing?
What's the international community?
Yeah.
'Cause
How do we?
there was a
is it
Russian up there.
international?
It was an international effort. So
Right. So is it a United Nations thing?
right, and I was thinking because they were planning to evac.
Mm-hmm.
If they had evac, like, hopefully not in the water, which is currently what we do, but hopefully that's not where they did it. Maybe it was in Kazakhstan or somewhere in the desert in the U.S. But would if it happened in the U.S., would we be okay with Russian MiGs flying over and coming in and taking a look because there was a Russian there? I think if we had Americans in Kazakhstan or in Russia, we would, and this happened, we would be sending assets over there.
Well,
So it's like, so there's this whole international, if they came back, which they didn't.
but I don't even know that there's a lot we don't know in this episode.
Yeah.
If we are actually going to be launching from from the moon to Mars, then maybe if everybody's coming back, they're coming back to the moon and not,
Right. And not to-
directly
Yeah.
back to the planet. Now, of course, we've heard from NASA that there are questions about this. Where are we putting stuff? And if you're concerned about contamination, you don't want to put everybody and everything back on the moon, because if you contaminate the moon, we've lost the entire moon. Now,
And
of
our
course,
best instruments aren't there.
but even if you imagine that the instruments are there, that we can get them up there, you don't want to lose the entire moon. Of course, this is the same argument for not bringing back to Earth, because you don't want to lose the entire Earth. So, I don't know. We don't know what the government policy is or
Yeah.
what the actual procedure might have been. We don't know.
What did you guys think about the interim point there where they were considering evacuation? Where Adelaide was.
I appreciated the fact that they, as they were contemplating evacuation, recognized that they needed to determine if if anyone else was also contaminated or
Yeah.
exposed. When you're talking about something as sensitive as this, trying to get personnel out of a base on a different planet and potentially, to your guys' point, heading back presumably towards Earth and ideally towards a quarantine, you want to try to make it you're as sure as possible, make certain as possible that you are disease free as you are leaving the planet.
Yes. Although I will add to that and say they weren't going to get back to Earth very quickly,
Yeah.
right?
No, it was going to be a 9-month mission.
At least,
And
right?
that was, by the way, that 9 months is the shortest time frame between Earth and Mars, which only occur within specific windows of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that 9-month period would have been
Right.
available, just happenstance.
We're
during that
just talking about
But it
anywhere
could've been.
from 9 months to like 3
It's
years,
still
right?
a super long time.
The point
Yeah.
is, especially with this particular organism,
Which needs
they
the water.
would have found out. But again, I'm back to passive communications.
Yeah.
If everybody turns, it's not like they themselves are going to communicate with Earth. And even if they did communicate with Earth, the episode implies that the organism becomes an entity that is sentient. It may sentiently use a communication system to say, "Can't wait to get back." You
Yeah,
know?
We don't know how smart that
Well,
thing is.
exactly. They didn't seem to be capable necessarily of speaking too much after succumbing to infection. But to your point, they were obviously smart enough to defeat the biocontainment systems and other elements of the base in order to get to the survivors. If there was any sort of text-based communication system, they might have been able to manipulate it. And let's be honest, this, a vessel full of humans that are infected with this disease are a threat to the Earth, just by virtue of having the ship fall out of orbit into the ocean. So the only scenario in which, you could essentially stop them is if, the US or some other government is aware that they are a threat and basically
Blows them out.
blows
Yeah.
them, in space, blows up the vessel returning,
Far enough out from orbit so that it's not even circulating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
around.
so you have to be darn certain that vessel is a threat to
Mhm.
do that, especially when the public is going to assume that it is, these heroes returning from this mission.
What year did this occur?
2059.
20. So, right now, I believe we just have video and comms on all the time, unless, or we would, unless the astronauts decide that they're going to shut it off, which they can, if we believe the movie The Martian.
I don't know if they're allowed to turn it off.
Well,
Or they're supposed
remember,
to be allowed to,
remember, what's her face says that she can jump the code and do all
Yeah,
that. So
that's true.
Well, and what's to prevent a vessel from saying, "Oh, we're having some malfunction over here, so we can't we can't turn
exactly.
on video," because in our haste to depart the surface of Mars, some damage occurred to our systems.
Yeah.
yeah,
It wouldn't be too difficult.
No, and I think you're right. And there's also like the difference between going like from here to the moon. Almost, it's basically instantaneous communication.
hmm
Same way we have the internet here. It's like microseconds, like seconds of delay. Mars, you're talking about 15 minutes of delay.
yeah.
So
So I'm just saying we have attribution issues here. We probably need to make some
After
recommendations to NASA
yeah,
about
Yeah.
don't drink the water.
I mean, I
Or
will.
just test the water.
Test the water.
I mean, I'll be frank though. For all the reasons,
Test the water.
yeah, I would hope that it would test water. But for all the reasons that we just discussed, I do think that the protocol probably, and this might seem draconian, but I think the protocol probably has to be, if you cannot be 100% certain of when exposure first occurred and who has been exposed, nobody's coming home. They just can't.
That was
can't-
my
can't be.
as
we
well.
should
I don't
be-
think evacuation should have been an option.
Yeah.
I think as much as that
Because I mean,
say.
think about it. Each stage of this episode, as more and more personnel are becoming infected, it's only because they were able to maintain control over their own bodies long enough to say self-destruct the ship, do X, Y, or the other thing.
leave me back.
Leave me back.
Right.
One water droplet hit my cheek.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it hits
there's
one
the
of
presence
the
of mind to say that I'm about to turn so I won't get you infected. They got lucky a couple times there. And if it had gone the other way, what would the result have been? And I think so to that point, I think quarantine and, assuming you're detonating unless you can get the pathogen under control, I think is your only option.
Yeah, and with how fast this was moving,
Yeah.
and I mean, we've seen faster diagnostics in other sci-fi movies that they've made, but I do appreciate that they didn't do that in this one because that is a lot harder than just making a even in 2059. I don't know how far ahead we'll be, but I doubt you'll be able to make one within 24 hours that could detect an alien pathogen with
Well,
100%
you know what? They
certainty.
probably could create one, but you have to have the information to feed your 3D printer and everything. in
Exactly.
order to create it. And that I don't think you can get that quickly. Even
Right.
we are not sure what's going on, and we got to see the whole episode.
And at
I
that point,
do,
you don't know how it spreads.
but
Or yeah.
look, there's a whole part of NASA, and I'm sure the other space programs as well, that sits around and just dreams up all kinds of scenarios and then figures out uh, protocols and procedures for what to do. It would be interesting to see what they think about this episode, whether they've thought of this kind of thing occurring, not necessarily how it presented, but to sort of any disease, you know, that would affect astronauts when we go somewhere else. I would think, Rob, you're absolutely right that if we can't be sure of what happened in terms of exposure, what if somebody's asymptomatic? I mean, we just
Well,
got to
yeah,
see
exactly.
asymptomatic people.
And we're talking about how this thing is supposedly intelligent, so it could
Mask
mask
itself.
itself,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is a
I think
cool.
absolutely
Yeah,
there's a whole like
I think everybody has to.
thanks and we're shooting you into the sun
We
process.
appreciate your service. Yeah.
But the happy part of that was they were remembered
Yeah.
as heroes,
Heroes.
but people didn't know why.
Well,
That's
I think
the part that kind of sucked.
Well, and
Well,
why
I
did
think they
Doctor
were.
Who go back to this particular time? Was he
Yeah, I don't know why he did
vacationing in
it.
time? Like, did he just feel like going back?
Well, first I want to follow up on the hero
Yeah, yeah.
piece. I think they were considered heroes because they were the first humans to set foot on Mars.
Yeah, like Neil.
I think they're like I think there's that there's just
But they were even greater heroes
well
than
yeah
public even.
than the public even knew, obviously.
Yeah,
But I think that's why the public and why the news
Yeah.
reporting called them heroes, not because of anything,
not
associated
because of
with
what
the
they
explosion.
Right.
During this period of Doctor Who, and I think other periods as well, sometimes the TARDIS just kind of ends up places without the Doctor really
Oh,
deciding. Sometimes it's kind of it's almost like he sets the TARDIS to shuffle mode, and kind of
huh.
goes on
Now,
adventures.
does he say that he's come back before? And
He
or is it other situations where he's tried to change the outcome and he's learned that he can't or he shouldn't?
so
I think they're separate.
I think what happened was it was familiar because he had seen the reporting before.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
And then as the episode goes on, and I mean, you could tell as soon as he realizes where he is, he's trying to get out of there,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, he's not
He understands he does not want to be there. He should not be there. And it's only because of circumstance that he ends up, getting brought into the base and
Mhm.
then feels compelled to
And
try to
then
help
his
these people.
humanity
Yeah.
and all three of his hearts kick in.
Exactly. But so yeah, so I think that's what it was. It was a dawning awareness of why does this seem familiar to me? It's because he was aware of what happened to these people from his other adventures.
Mhm.
And the fact that it's a bit of a fixed point in time because he knows what comes out of this event and
Mhm.
what it means for humanity and
Mhm.
apparently the greater galaxy
Mhm.
down the road for the
Yeah.
union of humans and this other alien race. So I think that's where it was coming from for him through this.
What did you think about his decision to go back and bring them back home?
Well, I mean,
Again, very
Yeah,
human.
very very human, but more risky than the alternative.
definitely.
Not just because it could screw up the
But look, he
timeline, but
is a
because it
Time
could.
Lord. He is a Time Lord, right?
I mean, but
So there's some part
he
of
has
him that thinks
limitations.
but what are those
I
limitations?
don't know. It
And
seems like
maybe he
has some.
decided to push the envelope this time and see if he could save them.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is obviously not going to be immediately apparent for anyone who has not been watching Doctor Who up until this particular episode. So you can't fully grasp this from this one episode alone. But at this point in the show's history, the Doctor has spent the better part of 4 seasons thinking he's the last Time Lord, feeling that he's responsible for genocide of both the Time Lords and the Daleks during this massive time war that occurred, and trying to reckon with that reality and his place in the universe as a result. Because he was always the kind of the class clown, as it were, someone who didn't like adhering to authority and the rules of the Time Lords and going off on adventures. Well, all of a sudden, you're all that's left.
Yeah.
You don't get to be the class clown anymore. You have the power of time in your hands, and nobody else is around anymore. And he had been trying to respect the time-space continuum, obviously, as implied throughout this episode, but he's just come off of a couple of seasons where he's lost a lot. Companions have come and gone. His most recent companion had to have her entire memory erased. This particular Doctor fancied as a woman who now lives with a doppelganger of him in a different universe. It's a whole thing.
Jeez.
So he's coming in.
He's had some trauma.
He's had some trauma and he's had some experiences coming into this episode. And it's finally when he's confronted with this very, very real, very important moment in time that he feels that he can't do anything about. He's wrestling with the fact that there are people here who want his help. Not him, but a later doctor played by the great Peter Capaldi has this lovely monologue in his own last episode where he says the point of the doctor of his mission is not to win. It's to help even just one person. And so here you have David Tennant's 10th Doctor seeing, not just saying I have to win, but winning is saving that one person. That's the doctor's point version of winning. Not to defeat an entire army, not to save civilization from obliteration. It's to save just one person if he can. And so he's confronted with this scenario. On the one hand, keeping to this belief that he has that there are locked places in time that you cannot mess with, and that it's not his place to interfere. Because that's what the other Time Lords used to do. They used to interfere, and that's what part of what caused the Time War, and he didn't want to repeat those mistakes. And on the other hand, he's seeing people, good people, who are trying to do the right thing, and he knows he can help if only he'd let himself do so. And that's just a tough tension throughout the entire episode. And then, unfortunately, he kind of lets it get to his head a little bit there at the end. Thinking that now that he's crossed that line, he's in the Rubicon, as it were, he can now do it whatever he wants because the universe didn't implode when he.
It seems like he got lucky because I was pausing at those articles at the end because there were very subtle changes. There's only a few words that changed from the old version of the article to the new one.
Interesting.
So that he gave him that confidence to be like.
Well, it gave him the confidence. It gave him the confidence to think, well, maybe I can
this major.
Maybe I can get away with it.
Care.
He was also probably riding the high, a lot of adrenaline in all three of his hearts. Thinking about or two of his hearts, and thinking about what a rush that was to save people. His mission in life, and he did it, and he defied the universe essentially in doing so. And so he was feeling himself, I think, and he decided to get a little cocky.
He's not a god. He's a
but in that moment, he probably felt like one.
But he still has these human failings.
Well, obviously, since he had the hubris to talk about how he was feeling to this woman and essentially cause her to correct the timeline. And I think it was in that moment where you could see on his face he is immediately humbled out of the Doctor. Was it the Doctor? Triumphant or
something like that. Time Lord Victorious.
That mentality. He's immediately humbled out of it, and you don't even see anything akin to that in the following episode. It's a brief moment, a brief blip where he kind of ascends to his most narcissistic level without a companion in tow, and then is brought immediately back down to reality with his mistake, the mistake that he himself has made coming back around. So it's a powerful moment, and it's an interesting moment for his history and his journey. And it's interesting. It's David Tennant's second to last episode, so they decided to have him experience that right before he finished his run. And I think it was a good episode to explore this in. To the point that was made, I think at the top of this, compared to Praxeus, and I really do want to make some comparisons there just because I think they're interesting. You have a very thoughtful story here that seems, while elements of it are obviously sci-fi, a lot of what is at play here seems realistic to me. What you expect from real people making real decisions. The biocontainment piece, thinking of trying to trace the origin of the infection, trying to figure out, can we leave, or is it not safe to do so? A lot of this, it ran pretty well. And what I think is interesting is obviously you have Praxeus, which has none of that. But in Praxeus, you had all these companions supporting the Doctor, and here the Doctor is by himself. He's thrust into this situation and has to make decisions without having what is arguably his conscience on his shoulder throughout. And I think the Time Lord Victorious moment is emblematic of that at the end. Now, I did have a question since we're talking about the sci-fi piece. I didn't think this was possible, but I wanted to get your guys' take. Is it possible for a virus that's inhabiting a host to generate water? Or do we think that the water that's coming out of these people is actually already in the body?
So comparing to Praxis, I think, where the virus was regenerating plastic, water is a little more believable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I cannot read off the chemical formula of plastic, but I know it's a lot more complicated, and it's only a human generated thing that does not occur in nature. Water is pretty simple. I could see water being regenerated. That did strike me though. Like, I think had I not seen Praxis, I might be a little more
Skeptical.
about the water thing. But after seeing Praxis, and then like, yeah, they just eat a little bit of plastic and then they make more.
So
But the water, I think that's it. Like, water is regenerative. And who knows? Maybe they have, like, it makes more sense because they could have like errant hydrogen or oxygen just within the virus physiology itself that attaches to other things and
but
somehow
that's a lot of that is a lot of
I know
H's and O's.
I'm
That's
stretching,
my issue. But I would
but
say,
I am giving it grace
look at
because
what
of the
happens
plastic.
sometimes when people get sick and they're throwing up. They throw up the contents of
Well,
their
yeah, that
stomach and their small intestines maybe, and but then they continue to throw up. And what's happening is another organ is creating bile, and that's
yep,
actually what you're throwing up. And it's
yeah,
astounding. Parents, family members will stand there and go, where is this even coming from? So I would say the human body is capable of generating some kind of
additional fluid,
liquid somehow, drawing from whatever it has. That said, though, the amount of
the
water
amount.
coming out of these things was just it was more than their body weight
Mm-hmm.
for some of
No,
them, the ones that
yeah,
were living, for a while longer. But
I
but
agree.
the
That's
question is,
unrealistic.
where's this stuff coming from, right?
Right.
I don't know that it's inside the human body. We don't know what was in those biodomes. We don't know how efficient the
Right.
human body becomes in
Could be
extracting
the
H's and
humidity of the
O's.
room
Yeah,
they were growing.
with the combination of this organism inside it. We don't, we're missing that mechanism. So what I thought was it's possible, but very hard to believe because
Yeah.
of the quantity
The amount of
that
water
they
that
were
was
putting out. And I have
spilling
only a
out.
question. When it's towards the end, you have like four of the crew members that have been taken over, right, by this organism. And things are happening, people are moving and things are getting set up to explode. But those people that have been taken over, they, they do something with their arms.
Yeah.
Oh
Remember
yeah,
this?
yeah.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Wasn't that the moment where the spaceship was about to take off?
Maybe.
Or I can't remember what it was, but it was
But
like it almost felt like it was a triumphant moment for them. And that was my takeaway in that moment, that they
so
thought something was about to
interesting.
happen.
Okay, so
To
then
me,
they
it
were
told me that
interacting with the brain somehow.
they told me that they were like
Um,
intelligent somehow. They might have had a culture
Yeah.
of some kind.
So this is the
You know.
second
huh.
this is the second episode we've seen now where there's a sentient virus of some sort,
Right.
right? Because Praxis also was
Well, I'm
somewhat
assuming it
sentient,
is, yeah.
or we're assuming it was. It's interesting that Doctor Who kind of likes to go down that path for this.
Yeah.
But in both episodes, you have a disease that is just so fast acting. I mean, it is almost instantaneous infection, and then also immediate seizure of motor functions
Yeah,
and
but
higher brain
you know why
function.
that happens though? I think. I think it's because we have an innate fear of that happening. It's not about how realistic it is. How many movies, how many TV shows have we seen about this? I think it's another reason there's so many zombie movies and so many vampire movies. I think there's something about that we just like
Well,
instantaneously scared of. And so it's an easy thing for these TV shows and movies to incorporate. It's easy because that we're immediately going to respond to that as an audience. That's my theory.
Mhm.
I think you're absolutely right, because it like just having that acute transition from feeling fine one moment and sick to the next. I know we've all felt that at some point. Usually that's not what happens with an infection. Usually it's gradual. It's
I
like
mean,
a
even Ebola
frog
doesn't
in boiling water.
Well,
doesn't.
and immediate physical symptoms. I mean, the
Yeah.
cracking around the
Uh,
mouth. And I was trying to figure out why they had that symptom.
I
tried
thought
to
maybe
figure
it
it
was
out.
like
I thought it was a
if
hint of
you're
practice.
dehydrated, sometimes your lips will crack.
I was wondering that too.
But so maybe that's part of this whole like water generation thing. It was actually pulling
from the
pulling
body, from
moisture
the skin.
outside of the
Yeah,
body.
yeah,
I mean, from inside the body,
yeah.
maybe.
But then you'd expect that to
To
continue to
extend
spread
It,
across
throughout the
more of
well,
the
I mean, I
body.
guess their faces began to look
Well,
worse, but
actually, one thing I think the virus, because it's intelligent, can control its own incubation period. Because there was one point in the show where they were like, her eyes have not turned yet,
Mhm.
but she's been infected longer
Yeah.
than some of the other folks.
I
So I
was
think,
learning how to survive. Yeah,
like the incubation period might be variable
Very,
based on the virus, which is what I thought.
and maybe the characteristics of the human or the host.
yeah,
very possible
right,
too.
yeah,
And there might have been
both
something
the
unique about her
interaction.
physiology that maybe it took slightly
little
longer.
longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do want to make a point about we're humanizing
virus.
the virus. Remember the movie that we reviewed with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds? Life. There's a big debate. When you watch this movie,
Is it intelligent?
you feel the first time I watched it, I
Right.
felt like it was intelligent. It was trying. It knew what it was doing, and
The
it was
scientists were
screwing
so
with
human.
their heads, and it's trying to get back to Earth.
Yeah.
But the second time I watched it for this podcast, I really wasn't that sure that that was actually what was happening. So in this one, in this episode, it did seem more like it was sentient, or at the very least, the organism was affecting the person's brain enough that they were trying to do something as sort of a survival thing for themselves.
There's a lot of problem solving that these
Yeah.
infected
Yeah.
were engaging in, right? Trying to figure out how to break out of containment, how to figure out how to
to get
break
into
into
the
other
Right.
parts of the base.
So it seems difficult to me when you're looking at such a small microorganism. How would this little teeny tiny thing be sentient in and of itself?
Yeah.
Now, if you have proliferating, if it's a virus, right, it's proliferating from now you have a gazillion of them. You'd still be saying that somehow all of those viruses are coming together and forming a sub entity inside another entity that now is like it's creating a brain and all that. I I don't want to, it is science fiction, and you are supposed to suspend some disbelief. But it's just kind of interesting to try and figure out what were they going for. In the end, what I decided was the writers were trying to play off of our own natural fear.
Mm.
Yeah. And I also think like to that point, like it is hard to imagine something so small and so like insignificant in and of itself becoming something bigger as part of like a group. But
Mhm.
it is, I feel like a hive mind
Hive
kind
mind.
of thing. Like
Mhm.
look at what ants do. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but
But
those
then look at
really are entities, though. They're
I know.
not viruses.
Okay, so we have
They're not
ants, but then we
bacteria.
have people.
Yeah,
We do the same thing that
I
ants
know,
do.
but ants have brains.
So do
What I'm
we.
saying, but the virus doesn't.
That's true. All right.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
listen,
No, you're right. You're right.
what I am actually saying to you guys is maybe it's not a virus. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's
I did. Yeah.
maybe it's more along the lines of one of the tardigrades,
Yeah.
right? Where it's really a small animal. It's a small entity. Like it could be microscopic. Now if we go down that path, now you have a whole bunch. Now you're back to your ant philosophy. You have a whole bunch of these things sitting inside a host. Nothing says that it wouldn't be able to. Maybe they communicate with each other. Now you have
Like cell
now
to
you're
cell.
linking. It doesn't have to be cell to cell. It could be entity to entity. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
That's true.
We didn't have the benefit of anybody looking at this thing under a microscope.
No.
Nobody had time to
Nobody
pull
had
a
time.
clinical specimen.
Yeah, they were too
Nobody
busy
had
trying to
time-
survive.
No time for that.
Yeah.
Take a look at it under the microscope, which would have been nice.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier in the episode about biocontainment.
Yeah.
Do you think realistically you could actually contain this sort of thing in a BSL-4?
I would need to know more about it. If it can survive in water, can it survive
in air?
In air, can it survive in bleach? That'd be nice to know. Most things can't, but
we're
it's
biology.
Mars.
yeah, I wouldn't take any chances.
But it's Mars. We
but
don't
like
know.
I don't know, like if there's a little bit of water in a solution, if it's 1% water, 99% bleach, will it just cling to the water and be okay? Or
Well, and
You know, so these are the things that I would, and if that's
it
the case, then no,
survived.
BSL-4 is not.
In theory, in this episode, it was in the water cap, right? It was in the ice cap.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It wasn't anywhere else. So like this is not the case of like an anthrax, right? In which it's gone
Right.
dormant somehow over here, but then you add something to it and then it, it becomes it so
It
it's
was always
only in
under
the
the ice
water.
cap.
Yeah, it was always,
Just self-contained by the glacier.
self-contained in the ice cap.
Well, I guess the point is that this is probably yet another thing that we have to consider as we prepare to
Oh, you were
travel
asking about
somewhere.
BSL-4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so would it be adequate? We're not even sure that BSL-4 is adequate for everything here on our planet.
Correct.
I don't know. I don't even know that we should be using
No, there's these
BSL-4 thoughts and thinking on other planets. But that said, you have to use something.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to say no. BSL-4, BSL-5 would not be adequate. But
I don't think so.
then what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? We're going to these places. You have to put something else in place then. I mean, I think, JT, you've talked about this before, this notion that we can prevent absolutely everything from happening is not good policy, or it's certainly not good government to just only be over in one bucket
Yeah,
of
all
biodefense
the time.
and only prevent everything from occurring, especially when you're talking about a situation like this where we know we are taking risks by going to other planets, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah. There's a little porosity, like porousness
Yeah, right.
in this case with the water. Yeah.
And I've heard astronauts talk about this, and we hear about it in the movies too, the space movies, that there is this understanding that there's going to be a physical and possibly other type of risk that they're putting themselves under, but it's just part of exploration, and we've decided we have to do it.
And adapting.
But what then do you do in terms of policy and in terms of procedure? I would say you have to assume somehow the worst case scenario, but if you assume that, then you wouldn't go.
Mhm.
But we're going. So
Well,
what
right,
what kind of biosafety situation do you come up with in that case? The best you could do is maybe isolation, right?
Yeah, I think, like we talk about like the best planetary, like if you want to be the absolute safest you can be with planetary protection, don't send anyone up and don't bring anything back.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with biodefense. If you don't want a lab accident, don't bring anything into the lab. Don't go look, but that's not realistic.
Right.
Even if that's the way we wanted to do it.
So, but here's the question, and I know we're going to get to this when we do the ratings. Is it good government policy with current biosafety capabilities? Is it good government policy for us to go?
Yeah, that will be a good conversation for when we do the ratings.
Yeah, it will be.
I will say though that to that point, this episode's far more than Praxeus is great food for thought for policy
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
with regard to astrobiodefense implications, and that's why I was very excited to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Given all the work I know you've been doing in this space, JT, because I was just the whole time I was watching, I was like, what does JT think about this? This
Feels
part.
like someone needs to do a report.
I think so. I will say the one thing that I would have done in response is I would have turned down the temperature immensely. I would have frozen
the whole base.
Yeah, would have frozen.
Oh, interesting.
So that way the water can't be liquid.
Yeah.
At least that way, if it falls on you, it'll bounce off and not.
I mean, yeah.
Get into your skin and like it's more
But
controllable.
you'd be frozen too.
Well,
yeah, that's a secondary problem. I can deal with that.
But I think Asha, to the point we were just kind of talking about, and again we'll talk about it a little more during the ratings. But maybe the answer is you can bring all the biodefense, biocontainment capability, diagnostic capability into space that you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the final protocol is every member of that crew is prepared mentally
Mm-hmm.
to
do any number of things
that they have to, and frankly to record it all,
Mm-hmm.
so that those back home are aware of what happened to them if for whatever reason
Mm-hmm.
their self-termination becomes the only flexible
only
or
option.
adaptive option left to them.
Yeah.
Well, I think before we move on to the ratings, I do want to put a plug in for NASA and the like.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to remember that, in terms of who we've interacted with, you have the chief medical officer at NASA, and then you have the
Planetary
the
protection.
planetary protection officer. And in this case, maybe even you'd pull in planetary defense because there's some other stuff going
Yeah.
on. Um, so they do really great work. I think it would be interesting to see how far they've gone with all of this. We do know that they watch
They
many,
watch
if not all,
yeah.
of these movies and TV shows to just inform their own scenarios and I guess maybe interest. So it'd be interesting to hear what they think of this particular episode. But I think it just points this episode and some of the others we've reviewed and seen when it comes to astrobiodefense really points to the need to keep those kinds of people in these kinds of space agencies, just keeping in mind that this kind of thing could happen. Somebody has to figure out what we're going to do, and it might be on the fly. It might be that they do see something. They see people beginning to turn, and they can see it on a monitor, even if it is 15 minutes or even 2 hours after the
2 hour
fact,
delay, yeah.
whatever it is. They're the ones that are going to have to figure it out. If we eliminate those positions, or we say we're going to reduce them so greatly that they could only focus on one thing at a time or whatever, I think that would be a huge mistake. It's possible they could have intervened in this situation with Earth's resources to sort of figure something out.
Right.
It
It was 2059,
technically it's
so they
possible.
might have had other options, things, or even just having support on the ground support, comm support, even if it's
Mhm.
like you said, like it is a 15-minute delay. You're like, hey, we're having this, and this happens a lot on the space station. They don't know everything up there. Are they
Yeah.
equipped to handle most things, and are they ready to get outside and do the dirty
Mhm.
work? Yeah,
Mhm.
but a lot of the time there's 50 people down on the ground used to that they're talking to
Yeah.
Yeah.
to get help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And JPL.
and JPL. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and especially when we're talking about going that far away from Earth, where to the point you all been making, there's less guarantee of support, timely support,
Right.
or communication. And then you're talking about going and colonizing a planet like Mars. And that could, there's colonizing it, and then there's terraforming, which we haven't really gotten into
Yeah.
too much, but they
Mhm.
kind of start doing a little bit
They
in this
do.
episode.
Yeah.
Oh, and how
And there's-
dumb was it for that guy to eat that carrot?
Oh my
What
God.
was that about? You didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I could understand. I
was like,
kind of can
no.
understand not testing. First of all, they should have been testing themselves
Food could have been
constantly
irradiated.
anyway with
Yeah.
with clinical specimens, with whatever instrumentation we
Absolutely.
were able to send. But to not determine whether there was something had happened to plants that were living off of Martian water.
You are introducing
Is-
life.
Unforgivable. That guy deserved to turn,
Well,
in my opinion. He
and-
just stuck it. He didn't even wash
Yeah.
it off, although that might have made it worse. But
Well, and what if the pathogen had been in the soil, not in the, something that was dormant in the soil that came to life in
Inside of it.
oxygenated
exactly.
environment? I mean, we just assume that, well, it's because of the ice. It lay dormant on the ice.
No, it could be the
I mean,
oxygen. It could be anything.
I mean, what's to say it wasn't dormant, or it could have been dormant elsewhere. It did come from the ice, but you're not washing it when it comes out of Martian soil. That just, or you're not testing it to
Right.
make sure it's okay.
And there are so many things
Don't
that
they
have
do
life
this with The
cycles.
Martian too? Matt Damon just pops those
He does.
potatoes. And now, of course,
In-
he
in
didn't
his
have a
position-
choice.
But it's Matt Damon. He's actually immune to all biological
Yeah.
tests. I don't know if you know this.
And radiation.
He's Jason
Well,
Bourne.
Yeah.
No, but I will say, I think in that
He had no
movie-
choice there. He
didn't have a choice, but I also think in that movie he probably did. He was a botanist. He probably did test the soil.
Yeah, he
he
probably
probably
did.
did look at the potatoes.
He would know what to look for.
Yeah.
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 If anybody would, he would be like, okay, that looks a little weird. Why does it have an extra leaf this early on?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
I thought this was miles ahead of Praxeus, and I actually wanted to watch the next episode. I didn't, but it made me want to.
I do recommend it. It's
Because
it's a good
it
send
made
off.
me realize, okay, now I understand why this show is so
I think it-
heralded.
I
and
think
is
it
such a good show.
also speaks to how much difference it can make to have somebody who's the right kind of actor for this type of character, no matter what the topic is in the show or the movie. It's
Yeah.
not to say bad acting so much as I think some people are just not good fits for this kind of character.
Right. And I think especially with this one, the way David Tennant is, I wasn't expecting him to kind of take like a little bit of a villain arc toward the end of it. I was like, there's only like 10 minutes left. Where are they going with this?
Yeah.
But then it's awesome. I love that. Like
Yeah.
that moral quandary that he kind of has. And to that point, whether even just like screwing up the timeline, bringing them back was a risk
Yeah.
in and of itself to Earth. He could have killed everybody on Earth if
Mhm.
one of them was infected.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
You know.
And so there's a lot of hubris there.
There's a lot to think about
Yeah.
compared to, and Praxeus, there's a lot to think about there too, but
I
it just
am-
didn't feel the
same way.
The same way. I don't know. Like I was watching this intently and just constantly wondering what's going to happen next. Whereas Praxeus, I felt like I knew it was going to happen, and I was upset about it.
Well, you could see a story. Yeah, I felt that so very similar with the Waters of Mars. You see a story building,
Yeah,
and you want to see what happens next.
and all the characters are built up.
And
And it was longer.
And it was
in fairness.
yeah.
It
There
was
was more time.
a little bit longer, not too much longer. And you were able to see characterization of
Yeah.
the characters. You know, like the kind of you had a good sense of who everyone was
Right.
as the episode went on. And Praxeus just felt like a lot of noise by comparison. You didn't know where the episode was going. You didn't really get to know any of the characters really all that well, except for one or two.
Yeah.
Did
And
that fall before or after this episode?
so Praxeus was, I think, it
I
was
mean, in our time.
in our time.
not
So
Dr.
the Waters of Mars, I don't recall the exact year it came out.
2009.
2009. Praxeus, I believe, was 2020.
Yes, you're right. That is what it is.
Yeah. So 11 years later.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So maybe they were trying something different, I
It
suppose.
was different showrunner,
Mhm.
different production. I think it's just a different approach to the Doctor, which is, one of the enduring appeals of Doctor Who is that while the general trappings are the same, the TARDIS, the sonic screwdriver, it can sometimes feel a little different as a show because you've got a different lead and different showrunners who put their own spin on the character, which has its ups and downs, as we've seen with
Yeah.
these two episodes.
I have one more question before we get to the ratings.
Sure.
What is this guy's doctoral degree in? Is he an MD? Is he a PhD?
Doctor?
Yeah.
He doesn't have any degree.
So why is he called doctor?
Well, one of the more recent episodes, and I can't remember which Doctor tenure it was, the word doctor, as we know it on this planet, and apparently is known across the galaxy, actually comes from him.
So what are you saying? His first name is Doctor?
Multiple languages and civilizations came to use this man's name and what he refers to himself as, the Doctor, as a healer terminology for their respective civilizations.
Oh.
So we call our doctors doctor because of the Doctor.
Okay, but if he was a healer, then technically
Well, he's a healer in the sense that he helps people.
right.
Yeah, but he does not have any sort of degree. He does not engage. He does not practice medicine. He does not have a doctoral in anything.
Okay.
He just helps people.
And the who part?
Is that just like
That's another
changing?
that's another half an hour conversation. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about that.
Is there a Doctor what?
No.
Doctor where?
But
Dr.
the
what?
doctor is not his real name. It is what he has chosen to call himself, but he does have a real name, and it was actually the focus of an entire season. And maybe someday we'll have a chat about that. But there's a lot of lore there about the Doctor, their identity, their place within the galaxy and within the Time Lords, and their relationship to humanity and other races. But suffice to say, it is not the Doctor MD or the Doctor PhD or DVM for that matter.
Okay, got it.
Okay, you guys ready to get to the ratings?
Yeah.
All right. So relevance to commission recommendations. I think 4 or 5.
I'll give it a 5. I think we only have a couple of Biodefense recommendations, but we talked about some other things too.
Biocontainment,
Biocontainment,
attribution, detection,
response.
Yeah.
I don't know,
response.
technically medical countermeasure development, and
Diagnostics,
diagnostics.
yeah.
I don't know how much more
Yeah.
it could squeeze in there.
Attribution.
Yeah, I think I think
No.
5 is appropriate.
Yeah, I think 5. Okay. Scientific accuracy. I'd give it like a 3.5, maybe a 4.
I defer to you on
Three,
scientific.
I would give it a 3.5. Just it's more plausible. Like coming off of the reason I would want to give it a 4 is because coming off of practice, it was more scientifically believable, and what the scientists were doing was more believable in the procedures. But
I don't think we should be
That is different.
comparing. Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right. We should not be comparing.
should
So
not
I will
be
give it a 3 or a 3.5.
Well, I was gonna say, I kind
Because
of
the way the water flows, it's not, and the mouth
well, and
cracking.
how plausible is that sort of setup on Mars if and when we colonize?
Not. I don't think it's very plausible that you're gonna find
Well,
something.
that's
like
what they
that.
thought too.
But that's
I
what they
think-
thought too. So maybe I'm falling into the myth.
We haven't fully explored the
That-
ice cap. We
yeah.
just went down there and got a couple specimens and found something. But I would say I think we did not completely laugh off the entire scenario as we have with some other
others.
things. So
Yeah, it's a
I
fair
would
point.
give it a 4 because 3 is just sort of passable for us. And 5, I don't think it gets
No,
to
it
a
can't.
5.
For
Can't get a
the
5.
for the
No, for
symptoms
the,
of
the amount of water that was coming out of them. Like,
yeah,
You have to
and-
take something off.
I have
and
to
then
take something
and then
off.
the mouth.
yeah,
You
that
got to take off some for that.
it's just tough. I'm between a 3.5 and a 4 here
Okay.
because it just
Well, JT, you said a 3. Let's say 3,
I said
5.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think 3.5.
yeah.
Okay.
3.5 is what we should go with. Success of the imagination or creativity.
I give it a 4.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.5. I think, especially for the time, 2009.
Well,
That was right around the time I think some of the rovers were
mhm.
launched and up there.
I mean, clearly, the notion of water on Mars was at top of mind for the writers as they
Yeah.
were developing this. But I think it's, I don't recall when we really started talking about as a society the notion of ancient viruses under ice, the ice caps. But if that conversation was happening at the time, obviously they basically, thought about a scenario in which we encountered that elsewhere, where there was not,
Yeah.
government support immediately available.
I've never seen anything like that. Like, I've never seen somebody actually tackle this scenario on Mars specifically, but like a first colony type. I haven't seen it.
Mhm.
I can't think of any others, but so I'll give
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
That marks.
Yeah.
What do you guys? What did you say?
I said 4.5.
4.5.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
4.5. Entertainment value, 5. 4.5. 5.
I
was
thought
thoroughly-
it was entertaining.
I was so entertained I wanted to watch the next one.
Yeah.
Nothing about Doctor Who.
I give it a 5.
They're not all bangers. I do have to be clear.
Well,
There's
I
some
didn't
that are
watch
not
As
good.
demonstrated by practice. Yeah.
Government policy. I think the fact that they had a protocol was good.
Even though it was insufficient.
Even though it was insufficient, they at least had something in place. So I don't think we can give it nothing. Or and the fact that they were like there was an understanding, like if all else fails, we
We
knew.
have to die.
Yeah, we all die.
Yeah.
I would give it
And it was
A
international.
3, 5, maybe a 4. Because they did have policies and procedures in place. They did try to do the best they could do with what we have and had, I guess, or will have
Yeah.
available to us in the future. The government policy, I'm sure, was completely against, eating raw carrots that I can't
Yeah,
imagine that
yeah.
that's in the book somewhere. That go ahead.
That was a scientist, I feel like.
Who had gotten a little cocky.
Yeah, you do see that sometimes. Like scientists will inject themselves with their own things because like, oh, I'm so confident this is gonna work, and then sometimes it works and they get a Nobel Prize. Other times they die and nobody hears about it.
Okay.
That has happened though.
How often does that happen?
What, where
Well,
people
how
may
do
have
we
died?
know?
Oh, yeah. I don't know about the ones who have died. I only know about the ones who have succeeded.
Yeah, there's a reason, I suppose.
Yeah.
I would give it. For myself, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 because I think there are some things that
Yeah.
should have been happening, like the communications piece.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
comms piece was just
But
absent.
Yeah.
but I think I'm on board with a 3.5 as well. Unlike other things that we watch where, you don't see much government policy, and that's indicative of the fact that there is not much government policy or good government policy.
Hmm.
I think the lack of government policy here, or that we see, isn't because there isn't policy. It's just because of the scenario involved.
Right.
It can only be so influential in these
Mhm.
circumstances. They're far away from home. The government really can't help them or do much while they're out there, except have prepped them as best they could.
Hmm.
So I think 3-5 is warranted.
Okay.
I agree. Okay, portrayal by the actors. 4 or 5. I don't think anybody was unbelievable as a scientist, or
Yeah.
except for the guy who ate the carrot. But
But you just said that that's a realistic
I
thing.
could see a scientist. I could totally see a scientist doing that.
Especially if he was sure. If they did run every diagnostic they had on that
Yeah,
food, and he
yeah.
just decided it was okay. I say I can't give him a 5. That seems a
No.
little excessive.
I'd say 4-5.
4.5?
Yeah, 4.5. Tenet was just too good. Direction, production, and writing. I'm thinking of 5. Because
I don't know, JT.
All right.
Direction, I think.
again, I'm coming off of practice. but
Direction,
Riding the high.
The writing,
writing, good, but production.
well,
I mean, I did
Yeah,
having
fair,
intentionally go
fair.
for the campiness of it. I just feel like they could have done some
I'm more
things
on the production.
better. Yeah,
I
and
think
this
that's a
was a
fair
Christmas
criticism.
special on top of everything, so they got a little bit, at least some more money for it.
It's the BBC though.
What does that
Public
mean?
money.
It's public.
Oh, is it public?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a public.
okay. Well, I mean, regardless of the reason.
Well, no,
I'll
I
give
think
him a 5.
you do have
That's all
a
I'm
good
saying.
point, because I do think I mean, like, I don't mind like the campy-ish production, or it worked enough for me to suspend my disbelief, but I do take your point. Like, it was not up to snuff for 2009. I think,
But some of that is okay because that is the nature of the show. That's how they
Right.
do it. But yeah, so 4 something, or just a 4. Are we taking off a whole point?
For
production.
and writing.
I thought the writing was fine.
I think the
What
writing
was
was
bad about the
fantastic.
writing?
It's production and writing, right? Or
Production, writing, and direction.
Production or direction. Yeah.
I think the direction and the writing were.
I
I
mean,
think
look,
the writing was the best out of those 3.
I thought
And-
direction was fine.
Yeah.
I would not personally have cast actors and actresses who could not run, because you could tell some of them were really struggling.
The gravity is weaker there, Asha. They can't run as fast. That was scientific. No, I'm kidding.
Could you imagine if that?
That was the reason.
Consideration.
Just saying.
Yeah, I mean it's. Yeah.
Who's responsible for that? The producer or the director?
Oh, the casting director, presumably.
Yeah,
Right, so
that
under the
falls under
director.
direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say 4-5.
Okay, 4 5.
4.5. Okay, so that gives us a total of 4.35,
Wow.
which is a very high score
Yeah.
and outside of our normal average,
Which is a good sign.
which is a good sign.
Progress. as I like to
Progress.
say.
Yeah, we're making progress on the category
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us. And we hope that you guys will join us for the next episode of Biollywood. And remember, water is patient. Water just waits.
And water always wins.
You can do the one drop, Rob?
No, I'm good.
You said you wanted to do the one drop.
No, I'm good.
Okay. That's all it takes.
That's right. Just one
One
drop.